While you were all journaling, Robin asked me if I wanted a journal. And I said, I've actually already journaled. And you guys are about to hear it. Recent events have put me in a mind of a story that we all know. Once upon a time, there was a people confined, unable to become what they were meant to become. With no little effort, they managed to extricate themselves from their confinement. They did not know where they were going, but they shared a common perspective, a common language for rendering the world. And through that, and as part of that, and in fact, all importantly, within that, they had faith. They knew a promised land awaited them. These were the Israelites, a ragtag tribe searching for a home. And it sounds familiar. MBUU, too, left a place that we felt was hindering our full flowering. We, too, are searching for a home. We, too, do not know exactly where we are going, but have a common perspective for rendering the world, and I think we have faith. The Israelites were led by a stuttering maniac named Moses. He claimed to speak to God. And into the wilderness they went and wandered and searched. And are we there yet? 1 year bled into the next. Are we there yet? And the next. Okay, so maybe this wasn't the best or most inspiring example. But the point is, as I told you last time we spoke, the promised land is real, is now, was then, is faith, was faith, and will be. For them, for us, for you, but not for me. Not in that land. I won't be there with you. And it's a bit of a cliche, really. Spiritual leader of a group seeking the promised land fails to reach the promised land with the people they once led. It's a trope. And there may even be some mystical truth to it, a cost that perhaps must be paid. It sounds a little thin, but it is a state of events testified to in myth and borne out again and again in history. It may be that the initiatory spirit is not the spirit needed to make a settlement. The leader expires, retires, is killed, or otherwise vanishes, leaving the people to make the last passage, if they can manage to stay a people. And that's no small task. Wandering wears people out. It nearly wore out the Israelites. 40 years. We've been at this, 2 or 3? We can relate to their fatigue. We know what wandering feels like. But 40 years. You gotta wonder, how did they do it? Well, I'll tell you. Because they told us. Those folks were bound. They were bound to connection and to liberation. That's an interesting turn of phrase, or it struck me as such when I wrote it. Bound to liberation. The Israelites were bound to connection and liberation because they were bound by a covenant. They made promises to the divine and were promised in return. And in the end, those promises, not Moses, were what sustained them and delivered them. We too are wandering. We are worn. We too would be the worse for it were it not for our covenants. And we have two. We have our congregational covenant, which we sang at the beginning of our practice today, and we have our principles, the UU principles, which are in fact a covenant between congregations of the UUA, the Unitarian Universalist Association. We are also by them bound to connection and liberation. And these promises, our covenants, these are the things that will sustain and deliver us. Deliver you. Now, the Israelites had a name for the being with whom they made their promises, though they knew better than to utter it. Somehow the ages have loosened the prohibition and mangled the name. And those who utter it now utter it with some misapprehension. For they name it God and make of it an idol or a straw man. But the Israelites more properly knew it as the Tetragrammaton, what came to be called Jehovah, but was more properly named, and I'm going to try to say the Hebrew letters, but it's been many years. I think it's Yod, Het, Vav, Het. Is that right? I don't know. YHWH. Yahweh. Which is not so much a name as it is an observation. It translates, I am that I am. This is also the sound of breath. If you take a little license. I am that I am. The Jews knew better than to utter it, for how would any word capture or even do justice to that which this one would seek to name? There is a wisdom in this abstention from naming it. It's a deep wisdom, and we'll ignore it for now. Because today, for us to understand our own covenants, it is important for us to understand that Yahweh, the one with whom the Jews made covenant, is nothing less than being itself. And their covenant has bearing on ours. I am that I am. The Hebrews had a covenant with being itself. Now, we don't covenant with God. We covenant with each other. Aspirationally, that may seem a bit of a step down. However, I submit to you that this is a half dozen of one thing, six of the other kind of circumstance. If we affirm the reality of and our respect for the interdependent web of existence of which we are a part, interdependent with all of existence, well, that's just Yahweh with a lot more syllables. I am that I am, interbeing, God, each other. So we promise to each other to being itself through that, to welcome the stranger, encourage one another, listen, ask questions with an open mind and heart, stay in community through tough times. Why? Because we want to be loved. We want to feel love. Maybe you never allowed yourself to consider that the fundamental reason you come here is because you want to feel love. But that's what I've learned about you, about me, about church, about humans. We want to feel love. That's the promised land. We want to be loved and be loved no matter what. We want to know that there is a baseline, a safety net to trampoline us back up when we miss our mark and fall. We want to know that the best of us will be seen and celebrated so that the yucky bits of us will be embraced in that embrace and thereby be redeemed and healed. We promise to see the best of one another so we can work on the rest and rest in the work. Folks, that's just a whole lot of syllables signifying love. And you can hem and haw at love, and you can hem and haw at God, but you have felt it. You have felt love. Whether from a parent, a lover, a pet, a child, or a friend, or the sunset, you have felt it overwhelm you and burst forth from you onto another and the world. And you have felt this in subtler ways as well, even in the midst of pain and even in the midst of heartbreak here, even between us. And remember that feeling. Remember what it's like to be loved and to feel love. Because remembering it, you know that it is real, and it is real beyond my ability to describe it. And that reality, that state of being, that promise that sows love, that is why we are here. That is why we bring our lamps here. Our covenant is ultimately a covenant of love, and love is the feeling of radiant being, so it's here. It can't not be. And I've seen it. I still see it, and I see it now. The love, the open arms, the wide smiles, the broken hearts, the open hearts. If there's one thing that I would leave you with, it is a reminder, and I'm not leaving for a couple months yet. But if there's one thing that I want you to remember, it is to remember to see the love that is in this room and in this community. The love that binds us to connection and liberation, that lights our lamps and tends their flames. The love that overwhelms disputes and squabbles. The love that heals hurts, the love that invites us to reach out and risk to hope for each other and the world. The love that we so earnestly and rightly crave to give and receive, the love and heartbreak that calls us into action in the world. That is our promise. That is what sustains and delivers us. It's the rhythm of our congregation. It is our beat, our heartbeat. And while I am and have been blessed to be a part of it, I am quite obviously not it. It's way bigger than me, and it's bigger than any of us. It's the spirit of this congregation, of our collective. And it seems silly to say it, for it appears obvious to me, but I think this might be a good opportunity to recall that the minister is not the congregation. Never has been. My story here is drawing to a close that feels to me natural and organic. And if you'll permit me some grandiosity, it feels a little ordained. It's time for me to go. I wish I could have stayed to see the promised land that you will see. But the opportunities for compatible geographies and ministries in a tradition of our size are very, very few. For my family, we needed a congregation that fit us, and Katie needs trees, as I've said, or her heart aches, and I need mountains or an ocean, or my mind screams. And magically, it seemed it all fell into place for the next while. We'll be calling the North Shore of Vancouver, British Columbia, our home. I think some of you thought that we were going to San Miguel. That is just where the idea first occurred, to have a look around, but we're headed up to Salmon Nation. I want you to know that this has been, without question, the deepest honor of my life to serve you. To walk within your rhythm, to hear the heartbeat of this congregation. I do not say that lightly. I have loved being with you. There are moments that I wish I could show to everyone. And there are moments where I'm glad very few people were there to see it. And that's as it should be. We've been in this together for a long time now. And all of it, the beatific and the troubling. And I think there's been a lot more of the former than the latter. I hope so. But it all adds up to a whole. And it is rich unto unnameable. And it is beautiful. And like the promised land, that whole was there from the beginning and was there throughout and is here still. For that wholeness is a faith laid out in our covenants. It is the heartbeat that our covenants set into motion and rhythm. Our covenants of love, of being, radiant being. It's in your arms, your smiles, and your hearts. I love you. I'll miss you. The beat goes on. There is a tomorrow, and so you will have an interim for a little bit. The board and regional staff are already taking initial steps to that end. You will get some new blood with some fresh perspective, and you will find a home. And then you will call a minister who is smarter, funnier, more compassionate, more comprehensible in the pulpit, and better looking than me. And you will have grown, and you will thrive. Have faith. Not only is there a tomorrow, there is a promised land. It will be sustained and delivered by your covenants, by your love, by the heartbeat of that covenant. While I've got you here, I just want to say that your practice associates are going to need your help. They and the board and the project management team and actually everybody here will need the support of everybody here. And I'm including the snowbirds. MVUU needs its snowbirds even when they're away. Because MVUU needs all of MVUU. Need your help. The people, committees, and leadership will need your enthusiasm to buoy theirs, and you will need theirs to encourage yours, and they will need your gentleness, and you will need that gentleness. Be there for each other as you have been, but even more. Even better. Be bound to connection and liberation. Realize the promised land. Have faith in the rhythm of the beat of this people. Love and be loved. The beat goes on.